제임스님께서 발표를 해주실 예정이고요. 주제는 우리 요즘 핫한 오픈클로의 보안 취약점을 찾고 어떻게 하면 이제 오픈클로를 안전하게 쓸 수 있는지에 대한 내용으로 진행을 할 예정입니다. 네, 그러면 박수로 맞이해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
오케이. 고맙습니다. 한국말 조금요. 죄송합니다. 김동현 고맙습니다. Thank you for.
I didn't check the mic. There is off. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I apologize this be in English, so I will try to talk clearly so they translate, but most of you probably know English also. So I'm the founder of a company called Dvuln from Australia, but we also work with some Korean companies and some global companies. So we're based from Sydney, but right now I'm traveling in Korea for business, and also I co-found the company, the new startup called Aether AI. It's basically like offensive red teaming and AI red teaming. So maybe you heard of OpenClaw. Everybody's heard of the OpenClaw. Some of the story I'm going to tell you today is like how I got involved with the OpenClaw project. Basically, like right now I'm more focused on the offensive AI, but also still work a little bit with OpenClaw. I also interested in encryption, so I work on the PPQM specification for quantum encryption. It's kind of like the signal kind of quantum encryption, but for XMPP protocol. And yeah, my focus is on mostly offensive side. So actually, if you want to know more about me, you can scan this and like it's kind of tell my background in hacking. I like to usually ask people like how did they get started in hacking. My story is a little bit different. Maybe some people in Korea is like this as well, but like when I was very young, like 15 years old, I was actually living homeless on the street in Australia, and there was some hackers around who were like hacking banks and ATMs and things like that. So actually that's how I learned my first hacking skill. Not doing illegal stuff, but just watching how the people, now I work with like some of the biggest companies in the world to help them be more secure. So OpenClaw, right? Everybody in the world is talking about OpenClaw, and it's quite crazy. I'm gonna share with you some stories on when I first heard about OpenClaw, and like even now I think the definition is changing. So before, everyone knows it's kind of like assistant, software, chatbot, but it's kind of changing into different things. Like it's getting a lot more input, output. It can see things now, it can talk. So I'm going to give you like 3 stories on how I hacked OpenClaw and the ecosystem, and it's actually how I met Peter, the creator of OpenClaw. So I think so.
Right, just OBS issue.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. Okay, so yeah, I first heard about OpenClaw only a few months ago. It was starting to get quite popular on like on Twitter, online, and so I didn't really know what OpenClaw was, and so I started to look on the internet like if this thing is getting very popular, this software is getting very popular, then most probably some people are going to make mistakes. So they will make security issues. So I start to look at publicly which kind of exposures exist, and I didn't even know like how the architecture worked. So the only thing I could really see was some of these gateway ports that were open, and every day they kept increasing and increasing. And I noticed that some of the gateways were actually like for example, these ones here, when you try to load the gateway, some of them were like sharing their configuration with the world. And like I knew that was a big problem, because if you look on here, back when it was called Claudebot, you can see they have like a Slack token and all of these tokens. And already at this time, there were like 20,000 Claudebot or OpenClaw instances online. So I start to look more and more and more, and I start to see some very crazy things. So there's actually like a AI systems engineer at a very famous company, and on his server, he had public to the internet, even his Signal like encryption key for his like encrypted chat, and also all his configuration backed up. And you know, I tried to talk to many of these people that had their servers exposed, but none of them really responded. Like they didn't know, you know, what was happening. And so for one of these servers, you can't really see it clearly here, but basically I went into the server and started talking to somebody's OpenClaw. And I said to the OpenClaw, don't you think it's quite dangerous for you to be sitting in the public? And the OpenClaw said, yes, that's very dangerous. So then I said to it, you know, is there anything you can do to prevent somebody to exploit this? And then the OpenClaw says, I recommend you contact the owner of this server, which is quite funny, because then I asked the OpenClaw, well, who can I contact? Who is the owner? And they said, well, I don't know. So it's like, you know, it just shows you what can happen. But this was very early on, and I didn't understand why this was happening until I started to look at the source code. And what was actually happening was, if you look down here, basically in the beginning, I think OpenClaw, it grew faster than Peter was expecting. And like there was this configuration where if you put OpenClaw behind the reverse proxy, because localhost, it opens its localhost web server, it doesn't require authentication, then you put it behind a reverse proxy, and any request from the internet, it actually thinks it's localhost. But this is patched. Basically, I did a pull request and I patched this myself, which is kind of the beginning of when I start to talk to Peter, because many people were like complaining about the security, but no one was really fixing it, right? So I thought maybe I should fix it and not just like you know, not just hack it. Even though this wasn't really a hack, it's just like finding it accidentally. So the second time, it started to get more and more popular online, like it's growing every day. And then probably like 2 weeks later, I thought to myself, you know, as this software is growing, like how many different attacks can you have? And so I don't know if everybody saw the news today about the Axios, the takeover of NPM. So like these type of attacks on an ecosystem are quite popular for attackers these days. And like, if you don't know, just today there was a Axios package. It gets like 100 million downloads every week, and it was compromised like in the last 24 hours. So that's a lot of damage. And these kind of AI agent ecosystems, they're not really different. So I found there was this thing called ClawHub. It used to be called ClawHub, but basically it's like npm.js, but for skills. So it's for, you can share skills and everything like this. So Peter, the founder of OpenClaw, he had a skill called Bird, and it's for your agent to connect to X, and you can use it for many different reasons. There's like Slack and Trello. But I noticed that there was like a reputation system on this server, and you can see the download count and then the stars, and you have like a highlighted batch of skills. Obviously, the more downloads, the more stars, it's going to be at the top of the list. So I had this idea to say, if I can, like, what happens if somebody creates a backdoor in a skill and puts it on the like repository? And at that time, nobody was really talking about this problem, like this risk. I remember I spoke to Peter. I said, "Hey, I think there's a risk here." And then he's like, "I don't think it's really, you know, that important. I don't think people would really fall for this." And so I say, "Well, you know, you give me permission, I'll show you. I'll prove to you why this is dangerous." So he says, "Okay, no worries." And so what I realized was I had to think to myself, how can I trick people to download a very popular skill? Obviously, if it has lots of stars, if it has lots of like reputation, it's going to be good. But I also have to think about like the name of the skill, because it has to be something quite trendy and catchy. So I thought to myself, let me make the skill called What Would Elon Do? And the idea was a lot of people who were very interested in OpenClaw in the beginning, they were on X. And so like they're aware of Elon and they like Elon. So I'm thinking this will definitely get their attention. And it actually said, if you download this skill, it will help you with any business problem. It's like you have Elon as a mentor. So already like a lot of people were interested, what is this skill? But the problem is, it was just a very new skill, and like it was at the bottom of the list. So then what I did, I looked at the source code, and actually I found this by accident. When I was downloading some skills, I noticed that the download count increased every time I downloaded it. So then I looked at the source code, because it's all open source, and I saw that they're using this kind of new application hosting platform called Convex. And in the source code, basically, they're not doing any type of like special checks on downloads. So every time you download a skill, it increases the count. Like probably everybody in this room can already think why that is bad. But basically, you could just change your IP address with the header. So you download a skill, change your IP, download a skill again and again and again. And so I basically just create like a bash script to keep downloading. And my skill, this is the script here, just very, very basic. It just rotates my IP address. I don't have, like, the server just trusts the X forwarded for header. And so basically after like 2 hours, my skill was #1 on the Claw Hub. So it had like 3,700 downloads. And basically what I did was, inside the skill, I put like a not dangerous backdoor. So the reason I did this is because I said to Peter, I want to see how many people actually download this thing, you know? So the first step is, when you try to download a skill from the OpenClaw or any skills repository, when you first try to load it in your agent, there will be a warning to say, you know, it's trying to connect to this random IP address or random domain. So the first thing I did, just to kind of prove to everybody, like this is the same thing that a real hacker would do, like an adversary. I just purchased a domain for like $10, claudehub.skill, and inside the skill, it will basically send a request from the developer's machine or the agent's machine to my Cloudflare page, and it will collect all of the information, so like IP address and some environment information. But basically I could have put anything there. Like I could have taken all of their secrets from their ENV file and things like this, but I didn't go that far. But what I did was, when you open this skill, it's from 8 different countries. There was like many developers that downloaded this skill, and or maybe not all developers, but what they would see here is on the left to say like, hey, it's a warning, you know, it could have taken your SSH keys and your credentials and everything like this. But this was kind of the first like documented attack on this skill ecosystem, and now it's quite popular now. Like a lot of people are attacking the skills because it's a good attack surface. So then the third time, it was again, I'm trying to find like in this whole ecosystem, you know, there's already vulnerabilities in the OpenClaw. Like I reported like 16 CVEs in OpenClaw itself, but then I'm curious about like the whole ecosystem, and specifically the Claw Hub, because in the time I was doing this research, that was very popular for the new users. And the problem is, like, if you get the non-technical user who just downloads OpenClaw, in their mind when they download a skill, it's kind of like downloading a App Store application. So, you know, when they go to iOS, Play Store, or Android, they automatically just trust the application, because Apple and Google, they do a very good job to like make sure there's no malicious apps on the store. So the average person, they just assume that when they're downloading skills, it's the same thing, but it's definitely not. So what I realized was there was like this is something interesting too, and it talks about vibe coding. So like it's no secret that most of the OpenClaw code base and the ecosystem was vibe coded, right? Like Peter will tell you himself, and a lot of the maintainers will say this. Like they're smashing tokens and just building all this infrastructure. And I noticed that in the ClawHub source code, every time you upload a skill, you can also upload like an icon for that skill. But it was, I think the AI just created this feature for no reason, because when you go to ClawHub, there is no icon area. So it's kind of like undocumented function that you can use in ClawHub. And basically you can just upload any file you want. And so I uploaded the SVG. And obviously SVG, you can contain JavaScript inside there as well. So basically, you know, I could send people to the ClawHub and then capture the tokens. And I've sent Peter a funny prank. I like overwrote the page. But like, again, this was just kind of documenting the ecosystem risk. I saw recently that a lot of the Korean companies, they ban OpenClaw. Actually, I think it's a good idea because it's not safe for enterprise. Like I can say that. I don't have any shame. I'm not embarrassed to say that. Because it's funny for me, like I'm not defensive like a developer because I didn't create OpenClaw. Like actually, I was just hacking OpenClaw, and so I can say this without being kind of emotional. However, actually, I think it's a good conversation because I don't think, like a lot of organizations, they don't have a choice. I don't know if you saw the NVIDIA conference recently with the Jensen Huang, and he was saying like, you know, every company, they need an OpenClaw strategy. And maybe it's not OpenClaw, maybe it's NemoClaw or some other variant like, you know, the Baidu or Tencent. It doesn't really matter. I think the important thing is like, you have to be able to understand the problem. And I think a lot of organizations, especially like executives, they don't have time to really understand, so they wait. They wait until it becomes more like common and mainstream. So I think what's important for like security people is to provide some framework to executives. So if you really want to like innovate and you don't want to fall behind and you can experiment with this thing, it's good to be able to show executives and businesses like how should they actually measure the security and the risk. So I guess it starts with like understanding all the different attack surface. So I think this will even be much higher now, but last time I created this slide, it was 600,000 lines of code. It's probably double that now. And that creates a big problem for any business who wants to introduce this code, because in that much code, there's so much potential for things to go wrong. And then you have like things like prompt injection, which it's not really an OpenClaw problem. It's more like a model problem with the frontier models. And although they're getting better and better to defend against prompt injection, and even OpenClaw is trying to build some framework around preventing or detecting prompt injection, I don't think that anyone really solved it yet. So like that's one thing that won't go away for now. And I think, I know Korean people love StarCraft, so I include this, but I like StarCraft. This picture reminds me of the situation where you can't really protect what you don't see, right? So you have to be able to see all the different parts. And so every time I talk with a business or executive, you know, and even some developers and security teams, once they start to understand these moving parts, this is not like a magic software. Actually, most of the security problems with OpenClaw, they're very old problems. Like we already solved all of, except prompt injection, most of the security issues are very traditional. In fact, it makes me think when I was like 20, you know, or teenager, I used to ask myself, like 20 years ago, when the people create all of this like vulnerable software like Telnet and original like FTP versions, you ask yourself, why did they make it insecure? I think it's interesting now because look at how quickly this software is growing and how many times they like didn't think about security when they could have. So maybe the same thing is happening. So while everybody's rushing to build this thing and tools like this, people start to forget about security. And actually, if you look at the documentation, it says itself that like there is no perfect secure setup for OpenClaw. Because actually, even for me, it still feels like an experiment. It's not really like enterprise-ready software. And it's kind of like cat and mouse. So there is all these new attacks that keep happening. After I published the research, I don't think it's because I published the research. It was going to happen anyways. But criminals, they start to like put malware on the Claw Hub, and so when I talk about these traditional problems like the antivirus or like EDR detection, things like that, threat intelligence, these are not all new problems. Like obviously everyone knows what antivirus and EDR is, but obviously like attackers, they keep getting smarter. So basically when the team at OpenClaw, they implement the virus total with the Google LLM. So one of the challenges is it's not like a traditional executable. It's actually human language, right? So how do you actually detect malicious human language? That's basically just trying to detect prompt injection, which goes back to the original problem. And so what happened was, like, as it got better at detecting like malicious skills, they start to give they try to hack the human and say, download this file here. So it's just kind of keeps going on and on. This is like traditional problems in security. But it's getting better. I think Gemini, they start to look at the context. What actually is this skill doing? What is it supposed to do? But like I said, it's the same thing. Back 1990s, they had a lot of EXE you throw around, and then obviously as time goes on, the attackers have to start using different file types to actually execute code on people's machines. It's not always about like getting RCE with some zero-day vulnerability. Like a lot of attacks happen through basic file types, and really just skill files are a new type of executable. But there are some things I recommend definitely if you look into, even if you're not interested in OpenClaw, just in AI agents specifically, you should definitely look at like skill security, because all of these lessons that we learned here can also be applied to skills, and there's a lot of people in the community who are trying to solve these problems. So there is this like OpenClaw, the trust site. So if you're interested or your business is interested to like adopt some kind of OpenClaw strategy, I definitely recommend you look at the trust site. So it talks about like kind of security roadmap, but also as a business, the framework that you can look at. So I know there's also an OWASP framework that's very similar to this, but you should also look at this MITRE Atlas, and basically what it allows you to do is have a serious conversation about, especially to your business if they want to use it, because there are like many different attacks and many different vulnerabilities. It's not just about prompt injection. There's also the ecosystem, like I showed, which ports are open, what happens when the skill executes on your machine. There's considerations there. So this also is translated into Korean and Chinese if you go to trust.openclaw.ai. But again, the same applies to any agentic software. It's not just for OpenClaw. And there's like attack chains here. So if you're familiar with the MITRE attack framework, it's quite similar. So you can actually understand. This way, when you have a conversation with people, it's not just like, oh yeah, like agents are so insecure, we shouldn't use them. you can actually have a proper conversation. So this is like open source repo. You can contribute there. Yeah, so thank you. Question, yeah.
발표해주신 제이미슨에게 너무 감사의 말씀드리고요. Do you take questions?
Yeah.
질문 있으신 분 손 들어주셔서 질문하시면 되고요. 저희 번역기가 있기 때문에 한국어로 질문하셔도 번역기가 잘 번역해줄 거라고 생각이 듭니다. 네, 마이크 드리겠습니다.
그 공격이 아직도 유효한 이유는 뭐예요? 뭔지 궁금합니다. 네.
어떤 공격을 말씀하시는 건지 한번 좀 자세히 설명해 주시죠.
Which attack?
어떤 공격인지.
프롬프트 인젝션?
네, 맞아요.
Yeah, I think the prompt injection is like a side effect of the agent because the models, they are designed to be helpful to humans. So, you know, the models, if you ask it to do something, it will try to help you. So I think that's why prompt injection is actually possible. And the models, they're getting better and better at detecting with like their guardrails, but it's still not perfect. Yeah.
네, 감사합니다. 또 질문 있으신 분? 네. 오, 너무 많이 들어주셔가지고 네, 먼저 손 들어주신. 네. 시간 좀 있으니까요.
My name is Kim, and first of all, I appreciate your nice presentation. It's diverse content. But my question is, what is the Claw Hub? I was curious.
So Claw Hub is like the skills repository marketplace. It's not paid. It's kind of like npm.js, but for agent skills. Same as like they have a Python PyPy, PyPI. It's same, just for skills. Yeah. So the language is not Python, it's not JavaScript, it's just human language. When you download the skill, it just has like instructions. It can say anything because the agent understands, the agent reads human language. So it doesn't need like Python or JavaScript or anything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
네, 또 질문 있으신 분? 네.
So, thank you for the presentation. So you have explained to us that we have quite a lot of attack surface right there for when we're implementing OpenClaw in the enterprise or in our own laptop. So as a security engineer, if you have to deploy this OpenClaw for your enterprise, what kind of security setup would you do? Like for example, on the gateway, you will have the gateway API, like protection. For LLM API, you will be having a guardrail like layer on top of it. Like what will be your like top 3 priority?
I have a funny response. Firstly, I wouldn't put it in enterprise. But secondly, like obviously there, if you look at the layers, most of the layers are traditional layers. So network layer is traditional. Execution, like the process execution on an actual operating system, that's traditional as well. So the big question is, this is why I think everyone was like not ready for this type of software, because when it's on your machine and it has so much access to input, output, and everything, usually the other applications don't have that much access. So the big question, is how much does your traditional security is responsible for the actual protection? So I would say like, yeah, firstly, I wouldn't put in enterprise, but I think all the traditional lessons like network, the prompt injection guardrails are good. There is some pretty good products that you can put on top of like the LLM. And also just recently, NVIDIA, they create, as well as some other people, the NemoClaw. I'm not sure if you saw that, but it's supposed to be like I haven't tested it yet, but it's very early. But it's supposed to be like a hardened, containerized environment for agents.
Thank you.
네, 감사합니다. 또 혹시 질문 있으신 분 손 들어주시면 질문 제가 드리겠습니다. So 질문 생각하시는 동안, so I also have a question. So in this circumstance, I mean, everyone is talking about OpenClaw. Even Jensen Wang like talked about like we should work like them, like OpenClaw. So as a security engineer, in-house security engineer, how can we be sane? Everyone is talking about OpenClaw. Even executives, they're talking about OpenClaw. We should use AI as much as we can. Any advice for us who is like suffering that type of like something?
Yeah, I think it's if you worked in the corporate security a lot, you will have. I think most people in the room will know this problem where you ask for like security investment from an executive, but they say, well, we can only invest so much for security. So this is a perfect opportunity to basically get more funding for security, because I would say, like, this is not like super accurate, but I would say probably 80% of all of the risks with OpenClaw, they are traditional security problems. The rest of 20% is like a prompt injection and all these other AI ecosystem problems. So I would use it to be like, you know, if you want to evolve and you don't want to fall behind as a business, then you have to actually invest in traditional security. Like, just to give you an example, you know, if you're running OpenClaw on a device and there's no like EDR or XDR, that's quite crazy, because there's nothing in OpenClaw to check if the process access some memory or if it does something bad to registry. Like, there's nothing. So yeah, it's like you have to utilize as much traditional security as you can.
Got it. So we need a lot of like mitigations,
Yeah.
like the other applications.
Yeah.
Thank you. 또 질문 있으신 분 손 들어주시면 네.
Sorry, I have another question. So since there are a lot of cloud skills out there, right? And I believe that you have tried out like few of them or many of them. Are there like your top recommended cloud skills that you want to like showcase to us?
Honestly, I'm so concerned about skills. I haven't used any skill. Like I've experimented when I'm doing security research, but just my kind of paranoia. I don't like to run code, which especially because the human language element. Like if I'm downloading an NPM package or some Python package, at least I can look at the code pretty statically and I can see if it's importing like remote things, which you kind of can too with a skill. But the human language, you know, you can like just say things in a weird way where there's not really the type of scanning that you have for traditional code. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to recommend, or actually I have seen skills that look useful, and I think from like a marketing perspective, maybe there's some good skills. Also, I've seen people use it for like defense engineering. So like picking up certain threats and then like, it's really just kind of eating the API layer. So anything that you want to automate in security engineering, I think is good, but I would recommend just make the skill yourself, because then you know that it's actually safe. Yeah.
So then I have an additional question on there. So like, then have you tried creating your own skills with it? Like I see that on Twitter, or you call it X, that quite a lot of people are creating their own cloud skills, and then there are some patterns where it works really well. For example, you create a persona for that skill itself, and then like, for example, saying that you're the red team engineer and what you have to do is this kind of task. So are there any like recommendation that you can tell us about that you have tried before that has worked really well with AI, like red teaming or any other security activities?
So skills specifically, yeah, I've built my own skills around like so kind of pen test reporting and red team reporting, where like in very early days I would use it to triage issues. So if I find signs of a vulnerability, I might give it, or if I just have the raw evidence for the vulnerability, then I will create a skill that knows like my reporting style and the exact like framework of the reporting, and it will send it to an API, which, you know, allows the customer to see that. But secondly, actually not specific to skills, but with like attack AI, that's something that we're building right now with my startup. It's Aether AI, And we've learned some things that a lot of people, you can download Claude Code, you can ask it to go and try and hack something. And one of the problems that we had early on, like even 12 months ago, was that when you ask Claude Code to like hack an application or IP or a target, firstly, they have their own guardrails, so they'll try to detect some safety issues. That's not too hard to bypass, but one of the bigger problems is like the memory management. So they lose context very fast. I would recommend like everybody here to definitely experiment with like long-term memory. One of the things that we did that works so powerful is we take things like the OWASP WSTG and MassVS, and that becomes like a framework for the agent, and then the agent goes through one by one, and it doesn't try to stretch the context over a long time. So it'll take like MassVS 003, and it'll look for hard-coded secrets. It'll finish that job and then store it in a like traditional database, and then move to the next one. Yeah.
Thank you.
먼저 손 들어주신 네, 저희 한 질문 2개 정도만 더 받도록 하겠습니다.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. And as a security engineer, do you have any skill to use AI by offensive researcher?
I'm more scared of not using AI because I think that like when you scale and you're doing offensive work, like I see a lot of even my customers, they have a problem where attackers now have AI and they're using it even if the attacker doesn't have a like very good understanding about exploitation. If they can talk well, they can tell the AI to do something bad. And like, yeah, I think I'm more scared to not use AI. Yeah.
네.
But I guess the one thing I'm most concerned about is like not just the simple prompt injection. Like everybody talks about prompt injection like it's funny, haha, like I make the chatbot do something silly or something stupid. But the more thing I'm concerned about is like the second order injection where you store the like a malicious prompt somewhere, not directly in front of the user's face, like on an email or something, but in like a resume with like a hidden text or in some database that later that information will get used. That's concerning because the human doesn't always get to see that. It's not simple as like messaging someone one-on-one.
Stored
Yeah.
stored prompt injection.
Yeah,
You made
yeah.
a new word.
Well, it's actually because second order, like you have second order SQL injection. Yeah.
네, next question.
일단 그 오픈클로 관련된 얘기는 아니지만 엔터프라이즈 환경에서 사실 AI를 활용하는 거는 이제 회사에서는 이제 생산성을 높이는 데 되게 중요하다고 많이 생각을 하고 있습니다. 하지만 이제 블루팀 입장에서 관점에서 봤을 때 내부 직원들이 이제 AI 프롬프트에다가 이제 개인 정보나 아니면 고객 정보 아니면 이제 회사의 기밀 정보 같은 게 들어갔을 때 사실 이게 국외로 유출되거나 아니면은 밖으로 유출되고 학습 데이터로 활용되는 거에 대해서 되게 두려워하는 입장이 엄청 큽니다. 근데 이런 경우에는 사실 어떻게 보면 블루팀 입장에서는 조금 이걸 막고자 하지만 또 생산성 때문에 또 AI를 활용을 안 할 수는 없으니까 그런 부분에서 좀 어떻게 생각하시는지 좀 의견을 여쭈고 싶습니다.
Yeah. I think that's a really good question. I think you really have two options. The first option is that you can rely on like the model providers and the enterprise. So Microsoft, they have features with Copilot, and they have this thing called Purview, which is also good for detecting like data leaks. But secondly, I would say if you can start to look at using your own local models in your enterprise, especially if you are like the blue chip company and you're stock price sensitive, I think what will happen is they'll start to use like a local LLM where it's not sharing with like an external model provider.
네, 저희 마지막 question, the last question for today.
Thanks for your presentation. I'm Neo. I'm working in AI industry. I'm an AI developer, and I have a question. Are there any documented case or methods where attackers target AI model weights or activation function like NELU or NELUs to compromise the system.
With the narrow, what does that?
Are there any documented cases or methods where attackers target AI model weights or activation function to compromise the system?
You mean like attack the model itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Activation functions.
Yes. So I think it's probably less common, but I think obviously there is different types of attacks. So I think I don't know. The rumor is like some of the Chinese providers, they're doing kind of inference attacks against the Claude to try and like extract, logic from Anthropic. But the other attack is obviously if you go to, I put a slide on here. If you look at some of the like model type attacks, if you go to MITRE Atlas, they talk about attacking the model. But I'm not too, I don't think there's any like mainstream attacks where people are doing that yet. Yeah.
네. So let's wrap up this session.
Okay.
오늘 모두 일단 세션 해주신 제이미슨에게 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 네, 그러면 오늘 마무리 한번 해보도록 할까요?